Welcome in to SEC Talk Conference Championship Week. We'll recap rivalry week. We had some crazy upsets, some wild games in the SEC and also around the country. So we'll get into it all. So how you doing tonight? You went 1 for 2 in your favorite teams and taking the victory this week. Your South Carolina Gamecocks got the victory in the Palmetto Bowl, but in the end, LSU couldn't get the job done in College Station. So how you doing tonight?
That's right. Let's keep the focus on the Gamecocks.
Yes.
Repping the home state hat tonight. Yeah, South Carolina looked really good. I kind of called that upset with my heart
You
rather
did.
than my brain, and it worked. So a good week for them. LSU, not as much. We'll delve into the details here in a little bit, but the Tigers still do have an SEC championship to play for.
Mhm.
So not all is lost, but disappointing week for them, but a good week of football.
Yeah, I have a feeling that you'll have a lot of South Carolina folks lurking in the comments section today. It's rooting in their interests of beating Clemson. I'm sure that they loved watching that game and your fans storming the field on Clemson's home stadium. So we'll get to all that. We'll have a jam-packed show. So hopefully everyone's having a good night so far, and hopefully you enjoy another edition of SEC Talk. So as always, let's dive into our college football playoff top 25 check-in. It was released at 6 o'clock. We have some new faces at the bottom of the poll, so that's where we'll start. So number 24, Mississippi State. They are one of the two new SEC teams. You see two of the maroon teams. Well, I guess the garnet teams, and that's what South Carolina's main color is as well. So Mississippi State, after a big win on Thursday night when we were stuffing our faces with our Thanksgiving meals, Mississippi State took care of the Rebels on the road in Oxford, and that gives them number 24. And the story of this show is number 19, South Carolina. What a story it's been. And, two top, pretty much five. I wouldn't really say top five, but it felt like a top five, two top five matchups back to back weeks. But beating Tennessee, beating South Carolina in your season, 8-4. Heck of a job by Shane Beamer. That South Carolina program is in the right direction. And the biggest drop that we saw in the poll is LSU going from 5 all the way down to number 14 after an embarrassing loss to Texas A&M this week, and they find themselves at number 14. And we round out now into the top 10. We have three teams in the SEC sneaking into the top 10. Number 7, Tennessee. Number 6, Alabama. I know that Tennessee has the head-to-head. I've been scrolling through Twitter. I'm seeing a lot of Tennessee fans upset with this. We'll dive into this discussion later on. And then number 1, Georgia. I was thinking maybe the College Football Playoff Committee would possibly sneak in Michigan the number 1 after the dominating win, but you still can't really disregard what Georgia has done. So are you surprised that Tennessee is below Alabama still?
Yeah, that would be my one complaint with the poll. Alabama, to me, should be flip-flopped with Tennessee. And then Chet did bring up a good point in our Sports Scramble group chat about LSU being at 14. At first, I was like, this is where this team deserves to be. And I still think they do. But it is kind of weird that a 3-loss Kansas State and a 3-loss Utah are ranked ahead of LSU when they were all 2-loss teams a week ago. They were not. So in the end, I don't think it really matters. I think that LSU's bowl positioning is pretty secure at that point. South Carolina chasing them at number 19, they could, of course, jump up in the final polls and snag a good bowl game.
Yeah, you make a good point there. We'll get into some bowl questions that I have whenever we get to our answering questions segment. But I know that we're SEC show, but I had to give the other top 4. Number 2 was Michigan. Number 3 is TCU. Number 4 is USC. And then number 5 is Ohio State. I mentioned this, that Ohio State is not out of the college football playoff picture quite yet. They would just need a TCU or a USC loss. They would probably prefer a USC loss. That would make them 2 losses. TCU would only have 1 loss, and then you get the argument of who, gets in. TCU losing to Kansas State, who's the top 10 team, or you get into the argument of, Ohio State getting beat by 20-plus points. But we'll get into all that at the end of the show when we get to our answering questions. But before now, we'll move on. So next, we'll have our reminder segment of the show. If you have any questions pertaining to the SEC, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions now that we're getting to the final week before Selection Sunday, we'll know what SEC teams where they're going and their bowl destinations, and then we'll get the top four who'll make it in advance on to potentially play for the national championship. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to leave us a comment. We love to interact. So let's get into the SEC fantasy now. A really high scoring week that we had for both teams, and our SEC fantasy is always presented by Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company, our friends over there in H-Town, and they got a new addition. The Astros, I saw sign Jose Abreu, so they're just becoming a super team as it is. I mean, they already had enough talent, and they're just adding more.
The
so
two Jose's holding it down on the right
Jose
side.
Altuve, yep.
On the right side. Yep.
Absolutely. So if you want to check them out, they have a website there, buffbrew.com. They have the best beers, views, and brews in H-Town. So definitely go check them out if you're around that area. All right. We'll give you the rules. I don't really have to give you the rules since there's no SEC fantasy draft this week because there's only 2 SEC teams playing, and I don't really want to put like one of us have an LSU defense and probably get in the wrong end of the stick there, and then I'll have Georgia. But as always in our bowl season, we will have our SEC fantasy draft. So all this will turn to 2, and we will see who gets that first overall pick because usually – whoever has the first overall pick gets a pretty good start to picking the bowl season. So we will see if your team will get that number 1 overall pick. So let's go ahead and dive into your Week 13 recap. And boy, what a squad you had.
Yeah, this team was one of my better units of the year. Didn't quite break that record, but as far as the skill position players, they certainly were on pace to do that. And the Alabama defense, they just kind of let up some garbage time yards against Auburn. Nothing to be too concerned about. They looked pretty dominant. But Bryce Young got it done. I think he had like 300 yards at the half, so he didn't need much more in the second. Phenomenal 343 yards. Quinshon Judkins, he played on Thanksgiving in the Egg Bowl. I thought Mississippi State did a good job of containing him, but, he's always going to get 20-plus carries, so he was able to cash that in for 91 yards, but it kind of felt like a quiet day because that game was oddly a defensive battle. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, a good day on the ground. And then Antwane Wells, it took him a little bit to get heated up, but, man, he sure did get hot and put up 131 yards coming off of 2 really incredible weeks. He's a guy that keep your eye on in the bowl season as well. And then, like I said, the Alabama defense, just a hair under 400 yards, but it didn't matter because I was able to get 170 yards.
Yeah, I was a little concerned from you looking at the Alabama defense getting 395 yards, but once I saw Antwane Wells have a good game, I think that you were in the clear. So 170 yards there in rivalry week is pretty good. So we will see if that holds up. So let's go ahead and shift our gears into my team. As you can see there, you definitely got the win. Will Rogers only 239 yards. Like you, I was surprised that was a very defensive battle between 2 high-powered offenses. So Jahmyr Gibbs was healthy, so I ended up taking him 76 yards against the Auburn defense. Malik Neighbors was the leading receiver for the Tigers, even though their offense did have some struggle through the air once again, 69 yards receiving. Georgia defense, 255 yards. I was expecting better against Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech was a scrappy team. They ended up scoring 14 points as I finished the day off 129 yards. So once a reminder, Wade will have the first overall pick in next week's show once we get to the bowl season. I just love SEC fantasy during bowl season because double the points and hopefully double the stakes as well as just.
And I say, hey, here's a rule pitch for you for bowl season. Do you want to drop the you can't use players in back-to-back weeks requirement? I mean, these guys have a month off. I mean, we might not see some of our favorite faces in bowl season.
Yeah, I say we drop it because it's going to be a month between the bowls. And I mean, usually like we love to do the matchups. And what if, Jahmyr Gibbs is going up against like Tulane or somebody like that, and you want to use them. So yeah, I think we drop that. We only use that for the regular season. Then for next season, we can tinker around with some. And if you have, our viewers want to see something new, definitely leave us a comment. We'll definitely, put some thought into it. So that is our SEC fantasy. We don't have an SEC fantasy draft, so we'll get right into the recap. So we'll recap rivalry week in the SEC. And we're going to start early with the Thanksgiving game, and Mississippi State and Ole Miss got together for the annual Egg Bowl once again. And this was a defensive battle, like we just mentioned. Mississippi State and Ole Miss. Now, there was some rumors that were eventually put to bed with, Lane Kiffin going to Auburn, but it was put to bed. Hugh Freeze ended up taking the job at Auburn. We'll get into that later in the show. But, yeah, this is more of a defensive battle. Both teams rely heavily on their run game. Mississippi State, had to rely more on their running game per usual. I mean, like you see down there, Will Rogers, only 239. 2 touchdowns. Aquarius Marks also had a good game as well. He found the end zone. Ole Miss, on the other hand, I mean, this was their best defensive game in quite some time, but in the end, Mississippi State got the revenge from last year's game.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that both teams were in the 20s here, and then a road win for Mississippi State. This is the second straight year that we've seen the road team win. So kind of a common theme across rivalry week. The road team couldn't count them out. So good job here by Will Rogers. I know it wasn't his best showing of the year, but he did just enough. And kudos to the Mississippi State defense. Like I said, I think they did a good job of containing the Ole Miss run game. I know that they still put up some yardage, but they limited the explosiveness and the number of possessions that they could have. And I think that went a long way into their win.
And they also did a very good job limiting Jackson Dart, beating him with their legs as well. So I think Mississippi State's defense, we talked a lot about their offense, but their defense has to be the MVP in this game of shutting down the run game as good as they could. So we will now shift our attention into the two Friday. We have an afternoon game and then we have a night game. So let's go on to the battle line rivalry that we had. Missouri Tigers. 2 of us picked Missouri. Wade and I did, and Chet was left on the island of Arkansas and ended up picking up a game. We'll definitely. I know that you're, looking forward to if you're on the top or the bottom of the standings. We'll definitely get to that after the recap. But Missouri ended up winning this game 29-27. Brady Cook. I mean, if you would have took him, like if we have the rule where we get rid of the rule if it's only the passing yards, and this would have been a whale of a game. In fantasy, 242 yards through the air, 138 yards on the ground. Who would have thought that Brady Cook would have been the leading rusher for this Missouri offense? I mean, Schaefer as well was able to score a touchdown as well. But the story of the season has been this Arkansas team. There was a lot of hype around Arkansas. You get KJ Jefferson back. I know that you lost Treylon Burks, but your defense was supposed to be, one of the best defenses in the SEC. But Arkansas really has been, part of the story of some of these teams falling flat. We see Miami fall flat. We know that A&M did get a victory to save their season. But Missouri has been a team now is going to be 6-6. They're going to go to a bowl game. So this is going to be good for this young team. Get Brady Cook some more reps in the bowl game. So this was a huge win going forward for Eli Drinkwitz's program.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just a big difference in getting a little extra practice time as a team. And a morale win, they actually lead this series, I think, like 6-2 or something since it started. So yeah. Missouri always comes to play in the Ozark Bowl. I don't know what its official name is, but that's what I'm going to call it. And a good job here by the Tigers. I'm looking forward to watching this team play in the bowl.
Absolutely. And Chet adds to the bowl. Nothing like the drama to the Egg Bowl. We didn't have any controversy, wide receiver doing a dog piss in the end zone, but we did have fans. We did have fans throwing stuff onto the field because of a controversial play call. But there's always craziness, and like you said, Chet, there's always drama to the Egg Bowl. We always love it. So same thing with this one. This one came down to the end. This was also a defensive battle as well. But in the end, Missouri picked up their 6th win. We'll see them in the bowl season. So the next one, we'll get into the Friday night game. We're going to head on down to Tallahassee here. And this was a high-scoring shootout. Our first 2 games that we looked at was circled on the defense. This was more centered on the offenses. Anthony Richardson going up against Jordan Travis. And Jordan Travis, everyone wants to talk about Drake May once you talk about the ACC. But Jordan Travis, I feel like he can be up for ACC Player of the Year contention with the way that this Florida State program has really shifted. Mike Norvell wasn't doing so hot in his first couple of years, and now this Florida State team finishes with 9 wins on the season. On the flip side, Florida, Billy Napier, his first year with the program, they go 6-6. Probably not the year that the Gator fans had in mind, especially with the talent at the quarterback position. But yeah, this was all Florida State. They ended up storming the field. I feel like that wasn't the only ACC team that stormed the field this season, but Florida State ended up getting the win. Do you have any concerns with Florida? How would you grade Billy Napier's first year with the Gators?
It definitely was up and down. But we kind of expected it to be a rebuild nonetheless. For Napier, brought in a lot of transfers, kind of like LSU did. I think the big difference was he's not used to playing this kind of schedule week in and week out, and it didn't help that the in-state rival here, FSU, had a resurgent year. So I think it's a little tough to compare just based on this game alone, but I think we'll see some progress out of Florida going into next year, and a bowl win would go a big way towards that. It'll just kind of depend on who they get. I think the best thing for Florida would be, to get the Liberty Bowl or the Music City Bowl or something that, is achievable. If they go play another team like Florida State in the Gator Bowl, this team could end up with a losing record.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely find out Florida's destination and all of our SEC destinations on next week's show where they're going. But definitely a huge win for Florida State. I mean, with this prime position, I think they're set up for a very good bowl game. Could even go to the Cheez-It Bowl, which is just down the road for them in Orlando, face off against, either a Big 12 opponent, probably Oklahoma State is what I would assume, but definitely a very good season for Florida State. Getting 9 wins could set up for next year's team of potentially, beating Clemson and on their way to the ACC championship. So Florida State is definitely heading in the right direction, and one has been heading in the right direction is the team that won the national title last year, and that was the Georgia Bulldogs. They're going to kick off for 11 a.m. games, and this one was a little sleepy start for the Dogs. Georgia Tech did lead this one for about a quarter. Then Georgia, after that, controlled this game 37-14 in the clean old-fashioned 8 game. And Kenny McIntosh once again gets the player of the game honors, 86 yards and a touchdown. Stetson Bennett had an okay game. He's definitely had better games. He really has been up and down ever since that Tennessee game. So we will see if we see, Stequavius Bennett show up this week in Atlanta. But sleepy start, but nonetheless, Georgia won this game pretty convincingly.
Yeah, I think they stepped up as the game went along. No concerns here. I mean, I think for Georgia, just got to keep the focus. Certainly, they don't need to win this weekend to be in the playoff, I don't think. But, you want to ride the momentum. And this team wants to win the SEC. I mean, they didn't do it last year, and I know that's not what's on their minds or their fans' minds, but an SEC title would be good for the program, and they're going to want to come out and take care of business on Saturday. I think they'll come into that game with a little sharper focus than they did against the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, if you think that Georgia's going to lay down, I mean, like you mentioned, you get up a great point. It seems like every time that Georgia finds their way into the SEC championship, I mean, I don't even think the last time was the early 2000s that this Georgia team won the SEC championship. I feel like every time they're either losing that 1 year to LSU, and the majority of the time they're falling short to this Alabama team. So if you think that Georgia's going to, fall down flat, like everybody's saying, it doesn't matter if they get blown out, they're still in the playoff. This team's going to want the number 1 seed because guess what? One of the 2 bowls are the Peach Bowl, and that's pretty much a home game for them. So they're going to be ready for this. So Georgia's not going to just back down for the Tigers coming forward. So now the game that everyone in the chat's probably excited for is the South Carolina Gamecocks taking down the Clemson Tigers at home, 31-30. And Antoine Wells was our player of the game for you. I know that you took him as SEC fantasy. It went pretty well for you. 9 receptions, 131 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And I know that you had your concerns throughout the game. You texted me, Spencer Rattler. You didn't know if you were so fond of him. But in the end, the offense, it was a slow start. Clemson, I thought, watching this game, I was like, uh-oh, this is about to be a Clemson rout, and South Carolina is going to be back to the drawing board heading to the postseason. But nonetheless, the South Carolina defense stepped up once again as they were able to get 2 back-to-back top 10 wins. And what a program win this was once again. I mean, your rivals pretty much dominated you the past couple of years, and to be able to do this while, Clemson, in the past 2 years, 10-2, 10-2. So we'll see, what Clemson does this week against North Carolina. But what a win for South Carolina. What a way to finish off the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is just a bonus. I mean, last week was enough for South Carolina to beat Tennessee, but of course the big fish everybody wanted was to knock off the hated rival, the Clemson Tigers. So huge win for Shane Beamer and company. I think this rivalry could get back to the point where it's competitive year to year. I mean, South Carolina was on a 6-game win streak, and then Clemson immediately answered it with a 7-game win streak. So not a lot of back and forth. I think just the way that both of these programs are headed, both should probably be ranked going into the game next year. And I think South Carolina will field even better of a team than they did this year, and they get the game at home. So
Yeah.
I think this rivalry is going to be back and here to stay, hopefully, on the national radar. But yeah, Spencer Rattler got off to a slow start, put his team in a really bad position with a pick 6 and then a critical interception from the 1-yard line. That was a 14-point swing in itself. And luckily, South Carolina's defense was able to set up the offense, and they were able to flip the field all day on special teams. Kai Kroger was constantly giving Clemson, 80-plus yard drives, 90-plus yard drives, and they just weren't able to move the ball. And it gave South Carolina the short field for Spencer Rattler to make some quick strike throws down the field, especially to Wells. So really like what we saw out of South Carolina. Offense wasn't always clicking this year, but they did find a groove, and their offensive coordinator actually just took the job at Nebraska to work under Matt Rule. So we'll see, if the Gamecocks have a similar look in the bowl game. My suspicion is that Shane Beamer, he might not call the plays, but he probably has a pretty big input on that offense, and I think they'll be just fine.
We'll see if that shifts the offense any. Man, I'm just imagining if South Carolina takes care of business in the games that they shouldn't have lost, this team could have possibly been 10-2, and could be potentially a top 10 team, because looking like the committee is loving Cox this past week. Bumping them all the way up 19. You can't blame them. I mean, they beat now the number 9 team, the Clemson Tigers, and then now the number 7 team in Tennessee. So those are 2 big wins, and we will see where South Carolina. I think that they're going to be definitely going to a Florida Bowl game. That's for sure. So Carolina fans won't have to travel far for their postseason hopes. So we'll now move on to the battle for the Governor's Cup, of an in-state rivalry once again. Number 25, Louisville, did not rank no more after this game, as the Kentucky Big Blue Cats beat them 26-13. Will Levis earns the player of the game. It wasn't.
What?
188 yards, 2 touchdowns. Rodriguez.
He had a good one.
Chris Rodriguez Jr. had a good game on the ground. I know that he didn't find the end zone, but he was able to get the job done. Kentucky's defense was able to limit Malik Cunningham and the Louisville offense, as this Louisville team, like I told you, they are just a hard bunch to figure out. They can win a good game the other week, and then they can come back and lay an egg like they did against Kentucky. So a good win for this Kentucky program. It was looking kind of iffy at the end of the season, but to get a win over your rivals heading into bowl season is definitely good momentum.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Kentucky, they regrouped and they got it done. The defense especially, they looked really strong. I thought Louisville would bring more offensively to this game. Will Levis kind of did what we expected, but he did play mistake-free football. And Chris Rodriguez, set the pace for the Wildcats. So all in all, a good game here for Kentucky. I think this gets them to 7-5 on the regular season.
Absolutely.
So a little bit below those expectations. I thought this team had 9-3
I had them
potential.
9-3,
So
8-4, around that range.
yeah, they just had a few games that didn't go their way, but should be in good shape. I think they'll probably be in the Liberty Bowl or the Music City Bowl. Should be able to travel well to that game and hopefully end their season on a win.
I would say every time that Kentucky goes to a bowl game, I feel like they just sell out all of their ticket allotments. So these Kentucky fans, I know that they're dubbed as a basketball school, but they sure travel, to their bowl games. So Big Blue Nation will definitely show out wherever their football team goes. So next, we'll go on to the 2:30 slate. We'll continue with this. Head on to the Iron Bowl. Like we mentioned last week on the show, it's not much of a hype around this year's Iron Bowl. It was close, but in the end, Alabama did handle their business against Cadillac Williams, 49-27. Bryce Young, like you mentioned, had 300 yards going into the half, and they was like, all right, we're up good enough. Let's just let's just get to the run game and Jahmyr Gibbs and get out of here with our 10th win on the season. So pretty much this is what I expected. Alabama finished their season strong. I know it wasn't the season that they were looking for. I mean, this was one of the more talented teams that Nick Saban has. I know that they fall short, but should still go to a bowl game, probably to the Sugar Bowl is what they're hinting. Barring
Oh man, what a bad year.
an LSU miracle upset on Georgia. So yeah, what a bad year it was for Alabama.
Yeah, I mean this team, that's how you know they're a good program when
Mm-hmm.
there's disappointment around going to the Sugar Bowl. I don't think Alabama fans will have a problem with having a good time in New Orleans, especially with it not being a playoff on the line. They can just really let
Yep.
loose. The players can let loose, have fun. Not the end of the world for the Crimson Tide, but for Auburn, this represented the last game of their season and their last game under the interim coach Cadillac Williams. You mentioned they hired Hugh Freeze.
Yep.
Interesting hire. We'll see how it goes. I mean, you got to think part of the reason why Auburn hired him was his resume against Alabama. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
game that counts at the end of the year. They were able to score 27 here and put up a decent fight, but they're going to have to improve defensively. And I think something Hugh Freeze will do is bring a spread offense, which we really
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen for Auburn in quite some time, maybe since Cam Newton.
I would have to bet Hugh Freeze is going to go into the portal and find a transfer quarterback because
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
think I don't know if he thinks that Robbie Ashford is the guy. And I don't know if Auburn fans think that as well. But yeah, this is the final regular season and the last time that we'll talk about this Auburn team right into the offseason. So now we'll go into the surprise game here in the SEC. 4-win Texas A&M got a 15-point victory against the top 5 LSU team that was playing for literally everything. They had college football playoff on the line, and even if they win this game and lose next week, they could still go on to New Year's Six. But all that was pretty much dashed on Saturday night in College Station. And one man, actually like 3 men on Texas A&M, Connor Weigman, the freshman quarterback. This was definitely his best game. He found Moose Muhammad so many times at one time in the end zone as well. But Devon Achane, I don't know if this is going to be his final, game in a Texas A&M Aggie uniform, but if it was, what a game it was for him. 38 carries, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns. I wish I would have took him in SEC fantasy. Give him a due as Texas A&M sadly won't make a bowl game. So this is probably our Devon Achane for SEC fantasy. So maybe we can get some words. Definitely been a star player. But on LSU's side, the defense did not want to tackle Achane for some reason. I mean, there were so many missed tackles that I lost track of. But a good win for Texas A&M. I know it hasn't been the season that they have hoped for. They were a top 10 team heading into this one, number 1 recruiting class. But to get a win against an LSU team that, I mean, it's your rival. You pretty much just ended their college football playoff and New Year's Six hopes. So I'm sure that they're loving themselves this week.
Yeah, I mean, just this time last year, LSU kind of spoiled Texas A&M's postseason hopes. They weren't number 5, but they took away any sort of New Year's Six aspirations for the Aggies. And this time it was A&M's turn to return the favor for the Tigers. LSU just really came out flat, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Sloppy on defense, missing tackles. I don't think anybody expected Achane to play in this game. So I don't think there's a great deal of game planning towards him. But if you're the number 5 team in the country and like LSU was, I mean, you can't allow that to happen no matter who's back there. I mean, you got to be able to make some plays and get your defense off the field and get the offense back on, because it took a long time for this LSU offense to find a groove. And by the time they did, A&M had too many possessions and the clock had dwindled down to, 5 minutes left or so.
And I knew that Chet was going to chime in. I can hear the pain in y'all's voices talking about this game, and this will be the final time that we will have to talk about this game. We spent 3 shows on this game. I know it was a disappointing Saturday night for Tiger fans, but like you mentioned on Sunday night show, Devon Achane, he could have just packed it in like all these starters that they do. But so I got to give credit to Achane. He stuck it out. He gave his all for Texas A&M. So I would have to say that he's going to be the next great NFL running back. I know that he's probably going to go in the 3rd or 4th round, but if he keeps playing like this and putting on, he's definitely going to be, next great rookie running back.
Can we say
next year's draft class? Honestly, that wouldn't be a bad place for him. The way that
Kamara's at that pivotal age 27 season, he's
going to be serving suspension, so you're going to need somebody to take over the backfield. But we'll see. We'll see where Achane goes. But I would have to put my money that this is the final game for him.
Hey, as long as he jumps on over to my dynasty team, I'll be good to go. I can continue to root for him.
And my mom adds in, poor played by LSU players. I definitely agree with that. I'm sure that every LSU fan watching the show, because I know that we have a lot of them, can attest to that. So we will move on from this game. We'll have one more game in the rivalry week. And I didn't even add a score for Vanderbilt, but not needed because they scored a goose egg. They scored a goose egg, so it's not even needed to even put up. I just did that. Vanderbilt fans don't want to even see what they had, but it was 56-0. There was hype. I know that Kirk Herbstreit, his super dog pick, he picked Vanderbilt to cover the 14.5. Cameron was on our Sports Scramble show. He picked Vanderbilt and our upset pick to Tennessee. But Tennessee closed the door on all that, literally on doors, 56-0. Jalen Wright. It wasn't Jabari Small. It was Jalen Wright, actually, the backup running back, leading the way. 5 carries, 160 yards. I mean, to get that many yards.
Big playability right there.
Yeah, really. 2 touchdowns. Joe Milton added a touchdown as well. And as, of course, our boy Jalen Hyatt had a good game as well. So, honestly, we should have just expected this from Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee's still a really solid football team. I think they should, ranked ahead of Alabama and kind of be the next team in.
Right.
If some playoff craziness happens.
Imagine if Tennessee fans in the Sugar Bowl, man, they would sell out every bar on Bourbon Street.
Yeah, I mean, this team's going to get to a New Year's Six bowl game, and if it's New Orleans, they're going to have a grand time. If it's Miami, they're going to have a great time, and could be Dallas as well. So Tennessee's in good shape. I do not like it when teams like Tennessee get discounted by the playoff committee for their quarterback or an injury. I mean, it's a team sport, and Joe Milton, he's not Hendon Hooker, but he racked up some serious points. And at the end of the day, we're ranking teams, not players.
Right.
It's up for the team to figure out how to adjust if and when they have an injury.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that Tennessee, the head-to-head, I feel like the playoff committee these last couple of years just throw that away. So, I don't know. That's just why playoff expansion is on the board, and hopefully it comes soon. That way we don't even have to have this discussion.
Hey, they'd be a playoff team in 2 years?
Yeah, they would be. Probably going up against one of either the Big 12 champion or the Pac-12 champion like that, since that would be the tie-in. So, and what you've been waiting for, let's get into those standings. And all of us are number 1. Woo!
8-5.
8-5 and 8-5.
We did have some contradicting picks, so I'm imagining some hit and some didn't.
Yeah.
But good weeks, I think.
Yep, good enough record to get us into the ReliaQuest Bowl. So we're all first place this week, 8-5 across the board. I was really surprised by this. I was like, of literally of disagreements we have, and we yet get the
Yeah.
same positioning and the pick and results. But we'll all take it, and we'll see what we do in the conference championship games, and that's what we'll go to. And it is presented by our next sponsor, Fanatics. There's our link down there. They had really good deals on both Black Friday and Cyber Monday. They had the same deal, 30% off site wide. Today, they actually have a beer sponsorship going on. Modelo is their code, so you can get 65% off. It's not site wide. That's what I learned. It's just a select one. On the Black Friday and Cyber Monday was everything, but still a really good deal that they're running with. So definitely use our link. The Christmas season is now upon us, so I'm sure that you'll have plenty of gift shopping to do. So if you want to buy, like some college football playoff championship, SEC championship, whatever you want, use our link down there. All right. I know that we're SEC talk, but we're going to get to, as always, that we do yearly, our conference championship picks throughout the nation. So to kick off our conference championship slate, the Conference USA Championship, North Texas at UTSA. And the fact that UTSA is not ranked is absolutely bogus. They are 10-2. I know that they're conference is really down this year. Their out of conference schedule wasn't great, but still to be able 10-2 should get you ranked. But nonetheless, UTSA finds himself here. So you're going to go with the Mean Green or going to go with the Roadrunners?
Well, have no fear, UTSA. Actually, both of these teams, you are joining the American Conference, and you'll be on TV more, and we'll get to watch you and appreciate you, and you'll probably get ranked as a result. So I'm going to give the UTSA Roadrunners a conference championship on the way out the door. Big loss for the Conference USA. They're losing a lot of teams from top to bottom.
Is that conference even going to be able to survive at this point? Because, you saw Southern Miss leave the Conference USA, and then you saw Old Dominion and Marshall go on to the Sun Belt. So
and it gets worse. Even Charlotte is jumping ship in UAB.
Oh, no. Well, it's not going to be anymore. It's like going to be the WAC. It's going to be no more.
They're adding Liberty, and then they're adding Jacksonville State is moving up from the FCS. So
they should just Jackson
probably going to be some growing pains. And then Louisiana Tech, they couldn't find a home. Sun Belt said we're full. So they're still in there. So look for probably Louisiana Tech and Western Kentucky to be the teams going forward in this conference.
Yeah, they could be the two powerhouses. But going forward, I'm going to pick UTSA as well. A high-powered offense is just going to be too much for North Texas. North Texas's offense has struggled at times. I think that UTSA's defense will be able to limit them. So give me the Roadrunners in the Alamo Dome. And Jets also with UTSA as well. So I'll run with the Roadrunners this one. So we all have UTSA taking home the Conference USA Championship. So our next one, these are the two Friday night games. The next one is the Pac-12 Championship in Vegas. So I'm sure that both of these fan bases will have a whale of a time over there. Number 11, Utah versus number 4, USC. This is a rematch from the regular season. Utah won the game 42-41 on a 2-point conversion at the end of the game. But USC has been riding with all the momentum. So there should be a classic out there out west.
Yeah. Utah is the defending Pac-12 champion. They spoiled, was it Oregon season last year, or was that 2 years ago?
I think last year, they did spoil Oregon season.
Gotcha. So they know what they're doing here. They know the role. But I just think USC is too hot. And I think given how close the first game was and given how talented both teams are, I'd be really surprised to see Utah get the season sweep. I just think it's bound to go 1-1. I know that on Sports Scramble and College Football Coast to Coast, y'all had a little bit of a differing opinion, so I'm curious to see how you go in this game.
Yeah, this was tough for me because, in the preseason, I was all riding with the Utah hype. I had them so hyped up that I had them in the playoff. That's not going to happen. But at least they're in the, the discussion, going possibly to the Rose Bowl if they can win this game. USC with a win they're in. They're already the number 4 team in the country. So if they win this one, they're just locked in. So this is pretty much a playoff semifinal before the playoff semifinal for the Trojans. Utah's defense didn't show up in the first matchup. USC and Caleb Williams was able to really dominate this game. I know this was close, but in the end, I got to go with the hot team. I'm going to go with USC. Just really trust, Caleb Williams in this matchup versus Cam Rising. Cam Rising has been up and down at times. He's turned the ball over, especially in the Oregon game. He had 2 turnovers in that loss. So Utah's defense is going to have to come to play in this one. They're going to have to generate some turnovers to flip the field on their side. But I have USC winning this one. I think it's going to be very, very close. These are 2 very even matchups as well. But I got to go with the Trojans. So I think that they punched their ticket into the playoff. And Chet, let's see if he goes through for 3 once again, and we are. So this could potentially open the door for Utah upset because usually
we didn't have a Utah pick.
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't as well. But we're all rolling with SC and Lincoln Riley taking home the Pac-12 crown. So we'll now go on to the Saturday slate here. We'll start early with the Big 12 championship, a top 10 matchup, number 10 K-State versus number 3 TCU. We saw this matchup earlier as well, like Utah and USC. K-State had a big lead, and then TCU, as always, they're a resilient football team. It doesn't matter if they're down 50, they'll still come back and try and find a way to win. We've seen it in the Baylor game. We've seen it in the Oklahoma State game. So do you have K-State, going 0-2 against the Frogs, or do you have K-State even up this series and cause a little bit of chaos?
See, I'm going to be a hypocrite because I just said Southern Cal and Utah were bound to split the series. Logic would say these 2 teams are as well. Very close game. TCU had the big comeback victory. One would say Kansas State could get a big lead and stay up against TCU. I think TCU could probably afford a close loss in this one and still make the playoff over Ohio State, but I don't think they want to give the committee anything to think about. They've been screwed over by the committee before.
Go back.
It's no secret they're not as respected as like Michigan or Georgia, so I think they come out and just get it done, leave no room for interpretation, and get the win.
Yeah, this TCU team is definitely hard to pick against. It seems like every game that they've, it's always close, except for last week's game when they won 62-14 against Iowa State. But this is going to be a defensive battle. I mean, these are the 2 best defenses in the Big 12. We saw it in the first match. I mean, Kansas State was pretty much the best team that shut down Max Duggan and that offense. They didn't know what to do in the first half. So they can do that for 4 quarters. I think they can win this game. It's always hard to beat someone twice. And I have it at my upset pick, so I got to go all in on K-State. So I think there's going to be some chaos. Give me the Cats over the Frogs here. I think they beat TCU in this one and cause a little bit of thinking for the playoff committee come Sunday morning. So give me K-State. And Chet is going to go on your side, going to go with TCU. So I'm perfectly fine with that. I'll ride with the K-State Cats, see if they can get the job done. So we will now move on, continue with our afternoon slate. And let's go to the Maction, baby. The Ford Field in Detroit. We had a good game on Thanksgiving night between the Bills and the Lions. We'll see if this one's going to be good as a treat as that was. We have Toledo versus Ohio. You would think that Toledo has the better record, but actually Ohio is 9-3. Toledo is 7-5. So you got taking the MAC.
Going with the Bobcats, Ohio. They were a big-time success story, probably right behind Tulane in terms of improvement. I think they went 3-9 last year, and then they flipped the script going 9-3 this go around. So, yeah, I think they are the team to beat in the MAC.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Ohio, what a story it's been. Toledo has had their time. It's Ohio's time now. I think that Ohio is going to give Athens some more love. I know that
they got Joey B.
Yeah, Joey B. Who even knows? He might even go to the game, but we'll see. But I think that the Bobcats get the win. This is going to be a high-scoring shootout. These are 2 explosive offenses, but in the end, I got Ohio winning the MAC. And Jet's going to go the opposite way. He's going to go with Toledo. He's going to go with the Rockets. The Rockets seems like every other year they win the MAC, but we'll see. So 2 Ohio and 1 Toledo So we will continue with our slate. The Sun Belt Fun Belt Football Championship. Coastal Carolina will travel to Troy, Alabama to take on the Trojans. Coastal Carolina, they didn't win the division. This stupid rule that I always hate. James Madison, since they made the move from the FCS to the Sun Belt, they had to sit out a year, which again I think is so stupid. Just get rid of the rule. James Madison literally beat this team that's in the Sun Belt Championship 41-7 last week, but still they're here. So you're going to roll Deshaun DeClaire is going to go with the Trojans, who are a heavy favorite.
Well, I didn't realize that Coastal Carolina got in here on a technicality. I did know they lost pretty bad to James Madison, but I saw James Madison had a few losses, so I didn't connect the dots there. But I'm still going to go with Coastal Carolina in this one. I just think overall this team is one of the more talented Sun Belt teams. I know Troy has had a really good year as well. Obviously, they're hosting this game for a reason. Coastal Carolina has struggled without Grayson McCall. He is injured. I don't think he'll get to play in this game, but he might be back for one last hurrah in the bowl game. But overall, I just think this team has a lot of talent from their previous years, and they're very well coached under Jamie Chaldwell. So, he could get this team a Sun Belt championship and then be in line for one of the Power 5 jobs out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Grayson McCall being out has definitely been a blow for this Coastal Carolina offense. Like, they just really haven't been the same. Their defense, hasn't been the same as well. Troy does give me some hope. I'm going to go with Troy in this one. Coastal Carolina shouldn't even be here. So for James Madison, I'm going to pick Troy.
It's a vengeance pick.
It's a vengeance pick. And, Troy and, wouldn't he, this game with Troy being here and hosting this one came down to that Thursday night game that Jacob went to Fox. So yeah. Troy versus South Alabama, they won that game 10-6. And that's why Troy is here. South Alabama wins this game and they're hosting. So that was definitely a huge game now that you think about it. But I think that Troy's defense will step up in this one. I think they have the offense and the run game to get this one, especially at home. This should be a sold-out environment, especially you have a championship on the line and a potential trip to a better bowl game. So I'm going to go with the Trojans and then win this one. Troy's always been, a sneaky team to begin with. So I'm going to go with Troy taking it home. And Chet's going to go with the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. And Vegas has Troy as a 10-point favorite. So this would be an upset in the bookies world. So we'll see if the Chants can pull off the upset come on Saturday afternoon. So now we will go on to the next conference championship. We'll stay in the group of 5, and this is a big one down there in the 504 as number 22 UCF travels to take on number 18 Tulane. We saw this same matchup 2 weeks ago. UCF won this one 38-31 in NOLA. So you got the Green Wave, getting some revenge. You got UCF sweeping the series.
I got a Tulane pulling off the win. I think this is huge that it's in New Orleans. I know that UCF did beat Tulane in New Orleans just a few weeks ago, but I dare them to come in and do it twice. I just don't think they can. I think Tulane sees the prize in front of them, and then today they got a huge boost. It was rumored that Willie Fritz was taking the Georgia Tech job. He came out and said he had not accepted it. Not to say that maybe he doesn't accept it on Sunday, but for now, he's going to coach this team, and they're going to want to win for him.
Yeah, absolutely. That was huge news coming out of Tulane. I would have to say that he's going to stay there. I think that he's building a really good program. Like you mentioned, Tulane last year was 2-10, and now that they're 10-2, have an opportunity to go 11-2, possibly 12-2. And like you mentioned, there's the winner of this one much clinches the automatic bid for the New Year's Six for the Group of 5. So this is huge implications for both of these teams. But like you mentioned, UCF can walk in once, they ain't gonna walk in twice to come out with victory. I'm not rolling against the Wave. Roll in this one. Got to support the Louisiana team. So got to go with Tulane this one. I think revenge and Willie Fritz earns their 11th win on the season and heads on to the New Year's Six. And Chet's also going to roll with the Green Wave as well. So not a surprise, all Louisiana boys. So Green Wave, we're taking it home for the American Championship. So now we'll head out west. We'll go back out west. Actually, we'll stay right here in SEC. I got my matchups mixed up. I thought we were going Mountain West. But since we're SEC talk, we have to talk about the SEC championship, of course. And this matchup lost a little bit of luster. This could have been a top 4 matchup, but now it's a top 15 matchup as LSU fall all the way down to 14. And they have to face number 1 Georgia. Georgia is the heavy favorite, 17.5. And what do you have in this one? I'm sure that a lot of people are not picking LSU in this one, so I'm guessing you're going to lean towards the Dogs.
Yeah, I got to go with the Bulldogs here. LSU just kind of had a relapse, in my opinion. I was buying the hype. I thought that they could give Georgia a game, and I still think they could, but just not being able to execute the basics against A&M and continuing to start off so slow. I mean, you're just not going to get away with that against a team like Georgia.
Yeah, you have to play perfect against Georgia. I know that Georgia, at times has just been really sleepwalking to start. We saw it against Kentucky in the 10-point victory. We saw it against Georgia Tech last week, but we've seen a team, in the start of the season against Georgia, against Oregon and the South Carolina game, the Tennessee game. So I feel like, Georgia, like we mentioned, it's not going to fall flat. They want to win an SEC championship for the first time, I feel like, since the early 2000s. LSU's going to have to play a perfect game, probably as perfect as they did against Alabama. They're going to have another performance as that. Their defense has to be able to step up against Georgia. I know that Georgia's offense, really isn't sexy on paper, but they do get the job done. So we'll see if we see a Jaden Daniels that is healthy. I know that he got a little bit banged up, but Georgia all day. I think they win this one pretty convincingly, 38-14. I just think that Georgia's going to flex their muscle and show the playoff committee that you're not going to move us down for number 2. We're going to be the number 1 team going forward. So give me the Dogs pretty much at home. It's going to be all black and red in the ATL. So, but as Chet, as always, he's upset specialist. He's going to go roll.
He's sticking to his pick. I give him props.
He's sticking to his pick. He's been doing this since the start of the season, pretty much, rolling with LSU to win the SEC. So he's going to stick with it. He's going to roll the Tigers. It would be a massive upset. LSU still has a lot to play for, even with the loss. A win would get them to the Sugar Bowl. I'm sure LSU fans will love that since it's just an hour drive away from them. So this, if they can get the upset, LSU would punch his ticket to the Sugar Bowl. So still, I know that their playoff hopes are still at the door. But if you can finish in the Sugar Bowl and with the SEC title in the first year of Brian Kelly, it would definitely be something. I'm sure that LSU fans would just forget about the A&M loss if that were. But also they'd be like, oh well, if we beat A&M, then we would be in the playoffs. So it's probably a lose-lose scenario for LSU fans. But
let's just get that Citrus Bowl invite and get on down to Disney World.
Yeah, so we will see what happens. So 2 of us are rolling with the Dogs, and 1 of us are rolling with the purple and gold. So we will continue on. That is our SEC championship. But now we'll move on to the Mountain West. Fresno State has to travel to the blue turf, and it's not easy to beat Boise at the home fields.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Boise State, that's just the name brand team in the Mountain West. When you hear the Mountain West, you think of Boise and Kellen Moore and all those teams of years past. And, they're not quite the same dynasty that they used to be, but they do run things still in the Mountain West, and I think that continues. I think Fresno won this conference last year, but I think Boise will reclaim it this year at home, and the winner gets a pretty sweet gig. I think they get to play in the new
the
Los
Barstool
Angeles
Sports
Bowl,
Arizona Bowl or something like that. I think so.
Oh, yeah. Yep, it might be that one.
Yeah. Boise State, blue turf. They're probably going to wear the all blue uniforms again like they did this past week. I mean, Boise State really controlled their division with a tough Air Force team. Fresno State, really good to even get here. I mean, they lost their starting quarterback, at the start of the season to an injury. But Boise State, I'm never going to pick them against, at the blue turf. So got to go with the Broncos. And this one, Chet is also going to roll with Boise. I mean, Boise was just a team growing up that you were just a fan of no matter what. I mean, they were just a team that you could just root for, especially with Kellen Moore there in their days, being in the top 5 consistently and just really dominating this conference. You know, the WAC and now the Mountain West as well. So we're all rolling with the blue and orange. So now we'll have 2 more games here to finish off our conference championship slate, and we'll go on to Indy. Purdue versus number 2 Michigan. Purdue, yes, they are here in the Big Ten West. We didn't know who the heck was going to get out of that division. Was it going to be Illinois? Was it going to be Iowa? Nope, it's the Purdue Boilermakers, and they're having to face number 2 Michigan. I know that Purdue, whenever they face a top 5 team, they turn into a super team all of a sudden. So do we see that happen, or do we see Michigan continuing to roll?
Well, I think Purdue will give them a good fight. But, I've been on this Michigan team all year,
Yes, you
and
have.
they're one win away from the playoff. They're probably already in the playoff, but
Yeah.
they could seal the deal on the 2 seed, potentially even the 1 seed with an impressive enough win. But yeah, Michigan looks pretty good to me. So I got the Wolverines here.
Yeah, this is going to be a pretty easy pick. I mean, Michigan all the way. I know I did pick Purdue to win the Big Ten West, so I will take that credit. I know that you have picked Michigan in your preseason top 4, so kudos for you. Looking like that's going to happen as well. But I'm going to go with the maize and blue in this one. Purdue, the only sense of hope that I have is that every time they face a number 2 team, they always find a way to win. But I don't see it happening. Their defense hasn't been great. I think that Michigan really could just rest Blake Corum in this one to save him for the playoff, get him healthy for that. I mean, Donovan Edwards is just as good. So, as you can see there, all rolling with the Wolverines. Pretty easy pick.
A finger tap there.
We'll
Giving
go
Chet the
on.
early pick.
We'll go on to the next and final game here, and that is the ACC Championship. It feels like every year that this sponsor is always changing, so I didn't even bother to pick it. It's presented by
blurred out the Belk.
Yeah, it was like Dr. Pepper, Subway, and now whatever it is, Belk. Number 9, Clemson versus number 24, North Carolina. I'm not really sure how North Carolina is still in the top 25, especially back-to-back losses to Georgia Tech and NC State, but they're still here. They're probably just ranked to just, the ABC has this game like, yeah, let's just keep this top 25 for a bit, and then next week we can kick
I
it
believe
off.
you. I think that's a good theory.
So who you have in this one? You have the Tar Heels. Jacobs pick. He picked him he's Mr. ACC. So you're going to roll with him. You're going to go with Clemson Tigers.
Well, I did put Clemson on upset alert in our Sports Scramble, Twitter segment, but it was kind of hazardly, South Carolina just beat Clemson, so I thought, why not? But I do think Clemson gets it done. I mean, they just own this conference. But North Carolina should come to play, and I think they are a really good team to lose 2 games in a row. But if you can't handle your business against those 2 teams, I just don't have confidence in them to beat Clemson at this moment. But Drake May could really show out. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Drake May is going to play better than DJ Uiagalelei. So if that's enough alone, I think they get the job done. But I look for Will Shipley to just go absolutely bananas in this one. I mean, North Carolina probably will not have any answer for him.
Yeah, North Carolina's defense has been a little bit inconsistent. They have been better in the last 2 weeks of the season, like you mentioned. If you can't handle your business against Georgia Tech and NC State, they scored 31 points with a backup quarterback. So
Will Shipley, they're on their 4th quarterback.
Really? So Will Shipley run hog wild on North Carolina. Give me Clemson. They'll reclaim their ACC championship and potentially, now that they're ranked number 9, they're still not out of the New Year's Six discussion. So with a win, they're locked into the Orange Bowl. So give me Clemson in this one. I think that Dabo and crew will get back on track. So going to go with the Tigers. And once again, we see Chet roll with an upset. He's going to go with the Tar Heels. So we will see what happens. This is probably, out of all the upsets that could happen, North Carolina over Clemson feels like probably the safest one because Purdue over Michigan feels like a long shot. LSU over Georgia feels like a long shot as well. So North Carolina is probably your best bet if you want to try and bet on an upset. So we will see if it happens. So that is our conference championship slate. We will now get into our hot topics. The Yeti sponsor now shifts over to our hot topics since we didn't have any looking out of the SEC. So Yeti
it's
offers
ironic. Yeti. it keeps you cold, but we're giving you hot topics.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't even think about that. So yes, that is great sponsor movement from us. So, but if you want to stock up on coolers, drinkware, luggage, you can get free shipping on orders of 50 plus or more, and you can link right there /scramble as always. So let's get into our hot topics. A lot of coaching news that we have, but before we get into that, we have some other news. Missouri's wide receiver Nick Lovett is entering the transfer portal. So we will see where he lands. We'll definitely keep tabs on that. There was some rumors that their freshman wide receiver was entering the transfer portal, Burden, but he's put a post out on Instagram that he is staying. So that is good news for Missouri. But Lovett is definitely going to be a huge loss. We'll see if he, goes through that, or does he come back for Missouri? I don't know about that. I feel like Lovett was, a go-to target for Cook. So we'll see where he goes. And
yeah, that's a complete NIL transfer,
yeah.
and that's the part of the portal and NIL I don't like. I mean, I get it. You only got a short period of time to get your name out there, play for a bigger program, but how about the team that you got to a bowl game this year? I mean, you're playing in the SEC. I promise you, if you're amongst the leading receivers in the SEC, the NFL will come and find you. And in fact, you'll probably have inflated stats at a school like Missouri where you're the number one guy. I mean, you could transfer to Alabama or LSU and easily be the number 3 guy just in terms of talent and recruits and not get that exposure. Why not be a dominant number 1 at an SEC school? I don't know. I just
Yep.
transfers like that I just don't like. I like transfers for opportunity, if someone has maximized their current level of play, but you're an SEC first team player, maybe second team player.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's the pros and cons about this transfer portal. It could be good for teams, trying to rebuild their program, but also could be bad for players like this, trying to go after NIL deals. But we'll see. Maybe he comes back, maybe he doesn't. But we'll definitely have it here on SEC Talk. The next one, LSU's Jaden Daniels was in a walking boot, but he did avoid a high ankle sprain, so that is good news for the Tigers. But I don't really know if he's going to be 100% going into this Georgia game. We'll see if he's going to be limited in the running game. If he is, it's pretty much a GG already. You can just hand Georgia the trophy because without Jaden Daniels, that's what makes Jaden Daniels. I know that he's, a good enough passer in the pocket, but really you look at LSU's wins, Jaden Daniels was the leading rusher for the Tigers.
Yeah, he's pretty much everything LSU has. I was listening to the radio today, and it said that Jaden Daniels accounts for 65% of LSU's offensive production. So he's got to go for LSU. But if he doesn't, it's understandable. That was a pretty nasty ankle injury.
Yeah. In other news, Josh Williams will be available, the star running back. He's really been the 1-2 punch there for LSU, so that's good news. Lane Kiffin is agreeing to a new contract, so he's going to remain at Ole Miss. So all the rumors were put to bed, as you can see in the next hot topic. Hugh Freeze lands at Auburn. I know that you already talked about this. I think that it's a great hire as well. I think that Auburn's offense is definitely going to be good every year. I think that their defense, if you hire good enough a defensive coordinator, I think that you have the talent. And like you mentioned, I mean, this was just the number one, like Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss. I feel like he was like that one coach that had its way with Alabama. And if you're at Auburn, your number one goal every year is to beat the team up north in the Alabama Crimson Tide. So that's a huge hire for Hugh Freeze as he comes back to the SEC country. I think that he built a really good program. He had Malik Willis at Liberty. I think that he's, take some time in the NFL with the Tennessee Titans, but that's definitely a splash hire for Auburn. I think that they're going to give them a couple of years. I mean, it's not going to be an overnight rebuild, but I think that Auburn in the next couple of years, Freeze, they're going to be a consistent winner down there in the Plains.
Yeah, he's just got to find his Chad Kelly and get the party started.
Absolutely. So we'll get into the answering questions segment. I know that our viewers already asked some comments, but actually I'm going to give you some comments now.
And I have a question for you as well. So let's hit yours first, and then I got one that I came up with during the show.
Okay, so we're going to play a little game. It's called Where is that SEC team heading this bowl season? So with the bowl season coming next week, we're just going to project where the SEC team is going to land. So obviously we have Georgia winning it, so we're gonna both put the peach. The peach is gonna be the Georgia Bulldogs, correct?
Yeah, I think Georgia is going to win. They're going to want to claim, the next door neighbor bid, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. So in the Sugar Bowl, who you got?
I think Alabama will take it. I mean, if LSU were to win, they would get the auto bid, but I do think Alabama will be rated slightly higher. I think it should probably go to Tennessee, but I think it's going to be Bama.
I got Alabama as well. So now we'll go in. Well, we can't really go to one bowl because this team could either go into the cotton or the orange. So we'll do cotton/orange.
Yeah, I think Tennessee's next in line. You got to think that they'll be headed to one of the two. I think that the Orange no longer has a affiliate,
They really only have a ACC champion tie-in.
but they don't have it's no longer Big Ten,
It's
right?
yeah, I think it's the Big Ten. I think really the Orange Bowl most of the time take the highest ranked SEC outside of the playoff, and then Sugar.
So we could be looking at a Tennessee team there, and then maybe in the Cotton Bowl, the Group of Five champion, and maybe like
Yeah.
the runner-up in the Pac-12 or something.
Or we could see Penn State slide into there
Yeah,
as
Penn
well.
State could slide into.
Yeah, I have Tennessee as well in the orange. So now we'll go on to the other bowl games here. We're just going to do the SEC tie-ins because obviously that's what our show is. So we'll go on down to the citrus.
I think that LSU will keep that spot over the South Carolina Gamecocks. I think both teams will travel well to bowl games,
Yeah.
but I can't see a bowl game penalizing LSU for losing a conference championship game and still only having 4 losses. So I think
I mean, they're not going to move
gotta go
down
with
that
them.
much. And I mean, when other teams are not playing, you can't really like drop them all the way down to 20 if just because they lost to the number one team in the country.
Yeah, I think LSU is a good bet there. I would say if you put South Carolina against Georgia this week, what would happen? But hey, the way they're playing, they might win. So
Saw that happen, but already saw
But
that
yeah.
game. But yeah, this ties into this as well. What bowl will LSU be in? We're both putting them in the Citrus Bowl.
I think the
I
Citrus
have them
Bowl
going.
would be good. A good
Yeah,
game.
I have them going up against Purdue. Probably. I think that it's either going to be Purdue or Illinois. So same thing. You're going to have like 4 teams in that. The Citrus or Rely Quest, LSU or South Carolina, and then Purdue and Illinois will be in that mix. So the Rely Quest. Who you got?
I'm going to go with South Carolina. I think it'll probably be South Carolina versus Illinois. It could be South Carolina versus Iowa. Iowa is a fan
That would
favorite
be an
down there in
automatic
Tampa.
win.
Huh?
That would be an automatic win against Iowa.
You say that, but Iowa beat South Carolina way back when in this game.
Hey, what a 360 would be? I would love to see that. Illinois versus South Carolina, because you have been fading Illinois all season.
Yeah, I would have to go with the Gamecocks in that one, but yeah, I think
Yeah.
South Carolina's a lock to play in Tampa.
Yeah, I got South
And
Carolina.
if not, they'll go to the Gator Bowl.
I don't know if they would fall down that far. I feel like South Carolina has already, they're number 19. I don't really see anyone getting above them. So I have South Carolina in the Rely Quest as well. The Music City Bowl.
I think that they'll probably go for either Missouri or Kentucky for this one, just off of geography. I'm probably going to go Kentucky. I think they'll just travel a little bit better. They'll want that fan base.
Yeah, absolutely. I got Kentucky as well. So, I mean, we're just in the same mindset as well. So we'll just
We're in sync.
We'll just continue on going. So let's go on to the Gator Bowl down there in Jacksonville.
This is interesting. I think this one's just a notch below the Outback Bowl. So, we gave Kentucky to the Music City Bowl already. They would have been a good pick here. But I think Ole Miss probably gets it, but it could be Mississippi State after that big win in the Egg Bowl.
Yeah, just because that head-to-head, I had to put Mississippi State here. I think that they get the nod here, go to the Gator Bowl. The next one we got is the Texas Bowl down there in Houston.
So for this one, I think they would prefer to have an SEC West team. I think Arkansas slots in nicely here, but Ole Miss, they could slip all the way down here. But I think I'm missing a game somewhere that Ole Miss is a better fit for. So I'm going to go with Arkansas at 6-6.
Yeah, this is where I'm going to put Ole Miss. I mean, usually the Texas Bowl is the higher up ones. I think it's really just you could even put in the same level as the Gator Bowl. I feel like the Texas Bowl, you're playing a really good Big 12 team. You know, could that be an Oklahoma State? Could that be a Kansas? But I think that Ole Miss slides in here. Next one, we'll go on to the Liberty Bowl.
Yeah, the Liberty Bowl is actually where I was thinking either Ole Miss or Missouri, but I think the Liberty Bowl actually is a low priority this year for some reason. What is the lowest priority
The
bowl?
lowest one is usually the Birmingham, but they
Okay.
have the Las Vegas Bowl, which is now a SEC tie-in.
Yes, that's the one I was thinking about for Ole Miss. So,
All right.
Liberty Bowl, I will give it to, I think maybe Florida would be a good spot here. But if the Liberty Bowl gets to pick ahead of Vegas, they would obviously snag Ole Miss. That would be a good fit, being right there in Memphis.
I'm gonna slide Missouri to the Liberty Bowl just because they had the head-to-head over Arkansas. I know that they lost to Florida, but I think that Missouri, with the way that their season has ended, I think that they get the nod here in the Liberty. So we'll go quickly here with the Birmingham.
Birmingham Bowl, I was going to give Missouri that one. But you could also look for the Florida Gators in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to put Florida here in the Birmingham Bowl. I mean, Birmingham Bowl is always the bowl that SEC fans don't want to go to, but I'm going to put Florida in here. And then finally, the Las Vegas Bowl.
And that's where I was going to send Ole Miss, but I kind of was under the impression that it was higher in priority than the Texas Bowl.
Location-wise, it might be higher priority, but it's on to 7 teams, so I don't know if that would be a higher priority for the SEC.
Huh. Yeah, so I guess Ole Miss gets it by default because they're the last team I got, but you got Arkansas?
I got Arkansas. Arkansas going there. So, I mean, that fan base travels and can send them to Vegas. Shoot, they wouldn't even remember that trip. They'd just be flat out drunk for that game. So, but that's my question. I have one more, so we can get to yours first, though.
All right, so looking forward into next year, you got the American Conference switching up a lot, and this year the Sun Belt kind of got a jump start on that.
Yeah.
They went ahead and had a really nice expansion. You hit on it. James Madison won the division technically in year one. Teams like Louisiana Lafayette still held their own without their coach. App State year in, year out, they're holding their own too. So do you think that the Sun Belt, at least temporarily, can overtake the American Conference as the de facto Power 6 conference for the next year or two while the American rebuilds?
I definitely agree because you'll have Cincinnati and UCF riding the ship to the Big 12. BYU will as well. So I think that Sun Belt, I mean, you're just looking at the divisions. I mean, you have James Madison, Appalachian State, Coastal Carolina on one side, and then you have the really on the other side is I don't know if they call it the North or the South. I don't know what they call it.
I think they go East and West.
Okay, East and West. But in the West, you have the likes of adding Southern Miss. I think geographically that was definitely a good move. You'll probably see the rivalry of South Alabama and Southern Miss pop up. You have Louisiana, who has been a consistent football program. It was a down year, but it was a coaching change. But yeah, I definitely agree. No bias at all, maybe a little bit, but I think that Sun Belt is going to overtake them and become the Power 6 conference. All right, yeah. My final question. We won't be recording once again, so we're going to get one more final college football playoff prediction. We did this on Sunday, but who knows? It changes every day. So who you got? Let's get a quick top 4 of who you think is going to make it on Sunday.
Well, I'm going to stick with my bread and butter. I picked a pretty boring conference championship week. So I'm going to go number 1, Georgia, number 2, Michigan, number 3, TCU, and 4 will be Southern Cal. But, Michigan still has a lot to play for. If they can get a little help from LSU, they could, of course, take that number 1 spot. And then TCU needs to be on high alert because if they lose, I wouldn't doubt it that the committee would move USC to 3 and slide Ohio State in at 4. So they got to look out.
I don't even have to go then. So I have that happening. Number 1 is going to be Georgia. 2 is going to be Michigan. 3 is going to be USC, and 4 is really where the argument can pop up. I mean, if I could see, TCU, like at my scenario, I have them losing by 3. Then, I mean, Ohio State versus Michigan. I don't know. You know what? I'm going to put TCU in it for the more I think about it. There's just no way that I could just leave out TCU. I mean, Ohio State didn't even make it to their conference championship in that case. So the more I think about it, the more it makes more sense to put TCU over Ohio State. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like I just want to see the new teams, and that's why I'm putting TCU over Ohio State. I had 2 days to think about it, and I'm going to lock it in. I even said it. I even put Ohio State an hour ago. So it changes by the hour, but that's what I'm going to stick
Always
with.
changing.
That way to save me, even if K-State loses, I still have TCU in, but that's going to be it. So I have Georgia facing off against TCU and then Michigan against USC. Give me those 4 teams because I would watch every second of it. But
Absolutely.
that's going to be it for us here during conference championship week. And we'll have one more show during the season. And we'll have a national championship preview if we do get an SEC there. Georgia is probably going to be our only hope. So if the Dogs get there, we'll have a show for that. But thank you for tuning into this week's show. And if you're interested in our other shows, we have Sports Scramble on Sunday nights, College Football Coast to Coast on Monday nights, and SEC Talk rolls on Tuesday night. So next week, we will review the conference championship week. It'll only be one game for us in the SEC of the Georgia and LSU game. And then we'll get right into the bowl season. Wherever our SEC teams will go, we will have the picks for that as well. We'll also have the college football playoff and the New Year's Six bowl games as well. So it's always a fun show every year. It's going to be a lengthy one, probably more than it was tonight. We'll have our SEC fantasy draft, double that. So hope everyone enjoys the rest of their week. And we'll see you back here next Tuesday on SEC Talk. Have a good night.